The phantom hitchhiker. It was a cold, inky night on a nearly deserted highway. Sam was driving home after a long day on the road, the only company the hum of his car engine and the distant sound of wind rustling through bare trees. The highway stretched ahead, lonely and endless. As he rounded a bend, a figure appeared on the shoulder, a lone figure, standing under the dim glow of a streetlight that seemed to flicker with each gust of wind. Sam slowed his car, heart beginning to beat a little faster. The figure was that of a young woman in a faded coat, her hair dark and slightly disheveled. There was no sign of movement except for her eyes, which shone with an unspoken plea. Her thumb was outstretched, a classic hitchhiker. Against his better judgment, Sam pulled over. He rolled down the window and called softly, "Need a ride?" The woman stepped forward, her footsteps making no sound on the cracked pavement. She climbed into the passenger seat quietly. For a few moments, the car's interior was filled only with the gentle sound of the wipers swishing against the rain. Then, in a barely audible voice, she whispered, "I've been waiting so long." Her eyes met his in the rearview mirror, a sorrowful, searching gaze. As Sam drove on, he tried striking up a conversation. But every time he asked her questions, she would only offer a soft, almost mournful smile, as if she were holding on to a secret too heavy for words. The night grew colder, and the rain began to fall more steadily. On the road, the passing lights cast eerie shadows inside the car. Then, abruptly, at a desolate stretch near a forgotten rest area, she spoke once more. "Turn here." Confused, Sam glanced at the map. There was no exit sign or marker indicating a turn, just more of the endless, dark road. Hesitantly, he followed her silent instruction. After a few minutes, the highway gave way to a narrow, winding road that was barely visible in the gloom. The atmosphere shifted, the air seemed to thicken as if weighed down by unseen memories. The woman stared out the window, her eyes fixed on something in the distance, but she said nothing. Finally, the road ended at a small, dilapidated rest stop. Under the flickering light of an old lamppost, Sam stopped the car. He turned to address the hitchhiker, but she had vanished. The seat was empty. In its place lay a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. With trembling hands, Sam unfolded it. The note read, "Thank you for the ride. I am forever bound to this road. Remember me, and help me find my way home." At that moment, the lamppost flickered one final time before dying, plunging the rest stop into darkness. Sam sat there in silence, the note a cold reminder of the night's inexplicable events. He started his car and drove back onto the highway, the image of her sorrowful eyes forever etched in his memory. And sometimes, on quiet, lonely nights, when the rain taps gently on the windshield, he swears he sees her ghostly figure waiting on the shoulder again. Always, forever, searching for a way home. Ghosts on the abandoned road. It was a bitterly cold night, the kind when the wind seemed to whisper secrets and the stars hid behind thick clouds. John had driven along the highway for hours and finally found an exit that led him to an old, deserted road. An abandoned by time stretch of pavement with no signs for miles and little to anchor him in reality. He slowed down, curious, the car lights cutting through the darkness. As he drove deeper into the void, the usual sounds of the highway fell away, no hum of engines, no distant chatter of other travelers, only the solitude of the night. Then, from the corner of his eye, he thought he saw something move along the shoulder. At first, it was just a flicker, a shadow darting between clusters of leafless trees. John hesitated and pulled over. He stepped out of his car, the cold seeping into his bones as he walked slowly toward the source of the movement. There, just beyond the halo of his headlights, the road lay empty. But then, in the distance, a figure emerged. It was barely more than a shimmering outline, a ghostly apparition draped in tattered clothing, its face obscured by the darkness. John's heart pounded. He blinked, unsure if the figure was real or merely a trick of the light. Yet as he watched, the apparition grew clearer. It moved with a slow, deliberate gait, as if it were searching for something lost long ago. A chill that was more than the night's temperature ran down John's spine. He noticed other shapes along the side of the road, a procession of fleeting figures that seemed to appear and vanish in the blink of an eye. They gathered like silent spectators, their eyes void yet full of sorrow, watching him with a haunting familiarity. John stepped back to his car, his mind racing. He fumbled with the door, his hands trembling. Inside, the radio was silent and the clocks ticking seemed too loud in the oppressive quiet. He started the engine, determined to leave, yet his eyes remained fixed on the figures outside. When he accelerated, the figures flickered along the roadside as if they were trapped in an eternal loop. At one point, he saw one ghost raise a hand in a slow, graceful motion. It was a beckon, a silent invitation, or a warning. John could not tell which. As his car rolled along the abandoned road, the apparitions seemed to follow him, gliding from one shadow to the next. Sometimes they would gather as if to form an unseen barrier, then dissolve into the darkness as he passed. The deeper he drove, the more the road transformed, curving oddly as if it were not meant for the living. Finally, at a bend where the road ended abruptly, John saw the largest of them all, a spectral figure standing in the middle of the street, illuminated for a moment by the glare of his headlights. Its eyes, full of sorrow and eternal longing, met his. For a long, silent moment, John felt as if time had stilled. The figure then raised its hand one final time, and as quickly as it appeared, it faded away. John didn't stop until he returned to the familiar hum of the highway. He never spoke of what he witnessed on that lonely road, though the memory haunted him in quiet moments. Some nights, as he lies in bed, he hears the faint echo of footsteps and a soft, forlorn whisper carried on the wind, a reminder of the soul still wandering on that abandoned road. The haunted circus. It was late summer when the circus arrived in town. A small, traveling carnival, set up on the outskirts of the village. Nothing too extravagant, just the usual tents, the smell of popcorn, and the sound of distant laughter and music. But there was something off about this circus. No one really knew where it came from. The people who had been around for years couldn't remember it visiting before. There were no advertisements, no flyers, just a sudden appearance, like it had been waiting to be discovered. Curious, Emma decided to visit. The lights were dim, casting long shadows on the empty fairground. The sounds of the circus were faint, like a distant echo, but as she drew closer, everything seemed to grow louder. The music from the calliope, the crack of the whip, the distant laughter of the clowns, it was all too inviting. As she stepped through the entrance, the air felt heavy, thick with the scent of old popcorn and sawdust. The circus tents loomed around her, huge and imposing, their fabric rippling in the wind. Everything looked normal, but something about it sent a chill down her spine. She wandered through the carnival grounds, passing by the usual attractions. The ringmaster with his top hat and booming voice, the strongman flexing his muscles, and the acrobats performing flips in midair. But something wasn't right. The performers, they weren't quite human. The clowns had wide, fixed smiles, but their eyes were hollow, empty black pits. The ringmaster's grin stretched far too wide, his teeth unnaturally sharp. And the acrobats, though graceful, seemed to move in a way that was just a little too fluid, too perfect. Emma was about to leave, when she noticed a sign near the big tent. "Come see the freak show." It beckoned her in. The tent was crowded, and the air was thick with anticipation. She pushed her way through the curtain and stepped into the dim light. Inside, the crowd was silent, the only sound the eerie creaking of the wooden floorboards beneath her feet. The performers on stage were strange, more like twisted versions of the people she had seen outside. There was a woman with no eyes, who smiled without lips. A man with arms too long, swinging them like pendulums as he spun in circles. In the last act, a tall, thin figure with a face completely obscured by a mask stood motionless at the center of the stage. As the crowd cheered, the masked figure stepped forward, moving toward Emma. Her heart raced. There was something about the figure that felt familiar, like she had seen it before. Then, without warning, it lifted the mask, revealing a face, her face. Emma gasped, stumbling backward. The crowd fell silent. The performer, now standing in front of her, reached out, brushing her cheek with cold fingers. It whispered, barely audible over the growing sound of distant music. "Come join us, Emma. You've always been one of us." Suddenly, the circus tents began to shake, as if a great wind had swept through them. The lights flickered, and the sound of the calliope grew distorted, warping into a low, guttural hum. The performers in the tent twisted and contorted, their bodies stretching and distorting like they were made of rubber. Emma turned to run, but the exit had vanished. The door that had once led her into the tent was now a solid wall of canvas, blocking her escape. She tried to scream, but her voice was drowned out by the laughter of the clowns and the deep rumbling music. The circus had trapped her. In that moment, Emma realized the truth. This was no ordinary carnival. It was a place for lost souls, those who had wandered too far and never returned. The performers, the clowns, the strange figures, they were all part of the circus now, cursed to roam the grounds for eternity. As Emma turned to face the performers, she saw the masked figure again. It had a smile on its face now, wide and wicked. And behind it, the other performers closed in, their hands reaching for her. She was one of them now. The whispering walls. Sarah had always been drawn to old houses. She loved the creaky floors, the peeling wallpaper, and the sense of history that hung in the air like dust. When she stumbled upon the abandoned house on the edge of town, she was immediately captivated. It had been vacant for years, with broken windows and a rusty gate that creaked in the wind. But there was something about it that called to her. Against her better judgment, she decided to explore. The front door opened with a loud groan, the hinges protesting after years of neglect. Inside, the house was eerily quiet. The rooms were filled with the remnants of a forgotten past, old furniture covered in white sheets, dust dancing in the shafts of light that filtered through the cracks in the walls. It smelled of mildew and decay, but there was a strange comfort in it. As she walked through the dark hallways, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. The walls, cracked and weathered, seemed to hold secrets, secrets that were slowly starting to whisper to her. At first, it was faint. A soft rustling, like paper or cloth. She paused, listening. Nothing. Just the wind, she thought. But as she moved deeper into the house, the whispers grew louder. They were coming from the walls themselves. Sarah. A voice, low and thin, like it was barely there at all. Her name. She froze. It sounded like someone was calling her from behind the walls, but there was no one in sight. Sarah. The voice was clearer now, almost urgent. Her heart raced, and she backed away, her feet stumbling over the floorboards. The walls seemed to pulse with the sound, as though the house itself was alive, breathing and whispering to her. Her curiosity pulled her forward, despite the fear gnawing at her insides. She reached the hallway at the back of the house, where a narrow door stood half open, leading to the basement. The whispers were now deafening, echoing from every corner of the room. They spoke in strange, fragmented sentences, fragments of sentences that didn't quite make sense. Don't go down there. Leave while you still can. Help us. Sarah couldn't turn back. She had to know. She stepped through the door. The basement was cold, a damp chill that sank deep into her bones. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and rot. In the dim light, she could barely make out the shapes of old crates and wooden shelves. And then, she saw it. A large, ornate mirror stood against the far wall, its surface covered in layers of dust. It was a beautiful mirror, its frame carved with intricate designs that looked ancient. But as Sarah approached it, she felt a strange sensation crawling up her spine. The whispers came again. Louder now. Urgent. Don't touch it. Leave now. But it was too late. Her hand reached out, almost of its own accord, and brushed against the mirror's cold surface. The instant her fingers touched the glass, the room went silent. The whispers stopped. And then, a reflection appeared in the mirror. But it wasn't hers. A pale figure, with hollow eyes and a twisted smile, stood behind her. Its hand was pressed against the glass, just inches from hers. And in that moment, Sarah knew, it was waiting for her. She turned to run, but the door slammed shut behind her. The whispers started again, louder this time, filling the basement with their chaotic noise. She was trapped. "Sarah, it's too late." The last thing Sarah heard was the sound of the walls closing in on her, the whispers becoming one, the voice of the house itself. And when the police found the house days later, it was empty. No sign of Sarah. Just the same whispers, coming from the walls. Some say, if you listen closely, you can still hear them. Whispers from the walls of the abandoned house, calling out to anyone who dares to enter. If you liked it, please leave a like and or subscribe. Thank you.